No. No.
Anybody ever experienced that outside of the Hafner household? This morning I'm going to talk about when God says no, when He tells us no. We not really doing a series per se, but we are in some ways. We're getting away from doing the video, and I thought, well, I'll try to find one this week. And so Chad, being our media ministry leader, he said, well, if you hadn't found one, I've got one of our own here. And so we have our own star, Anderson, there being told no. Most of us don't like to be told no. Before I give you the text and launch into the message this morning, I do want to point out, I thought it was funny that Corey was sure to tell us and point out that the group that did the lift kit was from Oakway. I'm just saying, I don't know if you caught that, but he did point that out and was very specific in that, okay? But no, we're excited. I wanted to take just a moment to say thank you for praying for my family. Most of you know, you see it on social network. My daughter, Addison, she left for Veracruz and was flying out, stayed a night in Houston, and flew over into Mexico. And first time that she's traveled like that without me. So thank you for your prayers. She's doing well, seems to be doing very well, what little bit of communication that we get. I just want to be mindful to tell you that I appreciate you always praying for my family. Sometimes I don't always put it out there, but just continue to lift my family up. We're in the crux of everything, and I just wanted to say thank you for that. I also wanted to tell you a funny story. When we had our 1-year celebration over at the high school, if you've noticed, we thought we lost something, and we really didn't lose it. We put our signs out, our little street signs that say one, and I won't mention any names, Wesley, but he thought for sure that they threw those things away. Well, end of the year, I get a call me from Pastor Bradley, who is our community pastor that prays before I get to speak and does a multitude of other things, non-paid. But he calls, he says, guess what I got in the back of my truck? And as you've seen this morning, all the signs. Someone had picked those up a year ago, put them in storage, and then dropped them off in Pastor Bradley's office. Now we have the signs. Also, just to let you know, because several have asked, our big sign, the one that we had made, that someone made for us, it is in the works right now. The grommets come in, if the grommets in, build a little frame for us, so we'll have the signs out and all that good stuff. But it was just a funny story that this whole time we thought they had thrown those away, and they had actually at the high school had them in storage for us. So God is good and always on time, saves us money, because we have a bunch of trustees that are tightwads. I just saying, all right, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing, I'm telling you. In lieu of that, last week, several of you seen some of the crazy pictures that were taken. We was doing that so that here in the near future, because we don't have, per se, deacons here or deacon family ministries, our trustees will be overseeing a lot of the families, and I wanted you to be able to put a face. And I know the crowd fluctuates, but when you have this many people that show up, on Sunday after Sunday, and different faces. Every Sunday there's different faces, and that's a great thing. We want to kind of let you know who is contacting you or give you an idea who may be following up and getting you connected to me or one of the staff. And so we've done that, and we had a little fun with them too, as you can see. We had a little fun with those pictures. Now, with no further delay, let's get to the subject. Have your Bible with you. I want you to turn. If you do not bring your Bible to church, or you're just a first-time guest here, we'll have them on the screen for you. We don't want to make you feel uncomfortable, but I do want you to see that it's God's Word and not just my words. I want you to turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. I'm going to jump right into verse 7 of where Paul is talking or writing the letter to the Corinthian church. And he's going to talk about his thorn in his side, or the thorn in his flesh. And I'm going to use that to illustrate how God told him no. And we're going to look at that, and we're going to deal with that. And the reason we do that is because last week I challenged us that most of us have been on this journey. We've gotten to a place where we say, really, God? Or we'll have days or weeks or months or seasons, and we just stop and say, really, God? And it leads us, if we're not careful, to begin to doubt God, if even deny God that he's even up there. Do you care about me? Do you even realize I'm down here struggling? Well, another one of those situations is when he says no. A lot of us, if not all of us, we hate to be told no. We want it, and we want it the way we want it. Matter of fact, I'm of the mindset or the type that I want it yesterday. You know what I'm saying? I don't have a whole lot of patience, and that is one of my downfalls. I know that you don't struggle with that, but that is a downfall of mine. And in this life, this journey, this faith, even in the church, I know that there are times, not necessarily in this season, but there has been, and there will be, because it's just my flesh. I know that I've gotten ahead of God and made decisions not based off what God was telling me to do, but what I thought he was telling me to do. You know, like I know best. And then there are other times that I've lagged behind. And this whole thing leads us, if we're not careful, it will lead us to begin to doubt God or even deny his existence. And so we want to talk to you a little bit about when he says no, because he will say no, and more often than not. And let's look at the verses together on the screen. Therefore, remember I'm jumping right in. Let me tell you why that's therefore. He had, in the opening of this chapter, something that I've really never even preached on. I've alluded, I've referenced it, but he talks about when he was caught up into the third heaven. The third heaven, of course, our first heaven is the atmosphere that we get to breathe. The second heaven is the stars, which they keep trying to go further and further and see further. They will not find an end to it, all right, because there is no end to God. Just like splitting an atom, once they discover they can split it again, they can split it as many times as they want. They will not find the end to it because there is no end to God, and he's the creator of all. And so the third heaven is where God lives, where he resides, all right? Don't ask me to explain all that. I'm just teaching you a little bit, okay? That's not the message today. But in this chapter, Paul begins to talk about how he was, and man, what an honor. Have you ever met anybody that's been called into the third heaven? Now, some of you have read books by folks that said they've been to heaven. You went to watch a movie, heaven is for, I mean, and I'm not making slight of that. I'm trying to make a point with that and say this, that it's a very real place. And what an honor, and even Hollywood is making movies about folks that said they've been to heaven and how they can, say that heaven is for real. So here Paul is, he's saying, I've been to heaven, I've heard this, I've seen all these things. Now, watch how he flips the script, though. He says, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, and I know nobody struggles with that, but I do, okay, so this is a word for me this morning. In order to keep me from being conceited or becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. The King James Version tells us that it buffets him. The Greek word there is literally, it literally denotes the idea that someone that is being punched continuously. That buffeting, that torment, and the tense, and I know that you want all this. This is good stuff, right? And the tense that it's found in, the English language, out of the Greek, is that it is continually going on in his life. So something he can never, ever really escape. And so he said, I just had this giant highlight, this mountaintop experience, and now, therefore, I could get all boastful and big-headed and prideful and all these things, he says, but I've been given this thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. And I don't know if he's literally talking about Satan was there. You know how sometimes you have the day from hell? Don't look at me like that. Everybody has them. Some of you have weeks from hell. Some of you having a month from hell. And you just say that because you're saying like hell is a really bad place and it's been a really bad time. I don't know if he's being literal here or if he's using that as an expression to say that Satan is buffeting. He knows that it is driving him crazy. And so he says, it torments me. Verse 8. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. 3 times. 3 times, same as Jesus, 3 times in the garden. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, love this, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more, Paul says, gladly about my weakness so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then what, class? I am strong. It's just how God works. He's opposite of everything. He's opposite of the world. He doesn't do the things like we are accustomed to, and that's awesome because God is so different. I mean, he's just opposite. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. He's always opposite. And so he's saying here, it's not your strengths that I want to showcase, it's your weakness. And let me give you a little bit of contextual, let me just set it in place here. Again, he's had this big experience. He's had this glorious experience. And I don't know about you, but some of the greatest struggles are Mondays for preachers. I know that for myself, and I know other preachers that struggle, especially if it's been a Sunday where people are saved or it's just the presence of God. And we'd love to be able to can that and have it happen every Sunday, but God doesn't do the same thing every Sunday. He doesn't show up the same way every Sunday and perform the same things every Sunday. If you go somewhere and it's the same thing every Sunday, I would venture to say that it's a production and not the power and presence of the holy and a righteous God. Because when you think you figure him out, he'll shift on you and say, I'm bigger and higher than your thoughts, and my way is not your way. And so here he's had this really huge experience, but now he's having this crash time. And a lot of us, we have this great experience. We get saved and we think, man, it's never going to go wrong. Everything I touch is going to be healed, and I'm going to be healthy. I'm not going to struggle. My finances I'm going to be taken care of. I'm going to check my account, and it's going to magically appear that I'm wealthy and healthy and all that good stuff. And a lot of preachers teach that. But it's just not the case, all right? It's just not the case because we should be encouraged just by the fact of who's penned this. This be Paul. What we know about Paul is that he was once Saul, a persecutor of the Christians, one that would say yes to the execution. He was there when Stephen was martyred, the first martyr. He held the cloaks of those. That's what Acts, we know this about him. We also know how well educated he was, how wealthy he was. All these things we know about him. We also know in that BC time, but we also know that once he become a Christian, that he's the greatest statesman for the cause of Christ outside of Jesus himself. That he penned the majority of our New Testament. And so we should be encouraged that here this guy, all right, Paul, the man that penned most of the New Testament or inspired most of the New Testament, that here he is, he's being told no. And so it wasn't based off who he was or what he had done or had not done. It was simply that God was saying no to him. And you say, well, he didn't really say no. Yes, he did. He would not take it. And he said, 3 times I asked. Now, a lot of people speculate what this thorn in his flesh was. And I've taught you this before, I believe. If you've been around me any length of time, I have definitely taught you this. Now, some people believe that he suffered from severe epilepsy. There's some historical documents that may suggest that. He fell from the he saw the light, he fell. They believed that he suffered from severe epilepsy. And as we well know, one of our very own, if not more than one of our very own, suffered from epilepsy. We know how tragic that is. Now, back in his era, that was considered demon possession. A lot of times they just didn't understand stuff. And so, but I lend myself to believe, which it really don't matter because we're not told, but some believe that he had poor eyesight, that he struggled. Some say he was crippled, that he couldn't get around well. I still lend it to believe that he couldn't see well. The reason being is because the scale. You with me? Say amen. I promise you I'll teach you something if you'll let me. All right. Because of the scales on his eyes, and then he had them removed, and I believe he had a hard time seeing. He was an older guy, but I believe he had a hard time seeing. And I say that, not that I have it figured out, because it really don't matter, because everybody has a different thorn, all right? That's why we're not told what it is. But the reason I believe that is because if you do study the New Testament, that he literally penned, hand wrote, or with his feather, he didn't write that many. Now, he dictated, and other disciples, well, they would write. I know that messes most of you up because you think God just took his finger and wrote most of the Bible. But anyway, it's God breathed, he inspired men. Anyway, but I believe it was because he could not see well. I believe he could not see well. But regardless of that, it makes no difference. Either way, we should be encouraged that here, this man of stature, one of the greatest statesmen for the cause of Christ, outside of Jesus himself, that he himself was asking God to take something from him, and yet he would not take it from him. That here he was, that, hey, don't you see, all these things, all these experiences, all this that I have done and will do, and yet I'm struggling with this. That's exactly how most of us live our lives. And what happens is we start to look over the fence, or we start to look at another church, or we begin to look at the coworker, and it seems like everything they do, and they're believers, all right? Last week I talked about how sometimes we look and it's a non-believer, and it's like, really? I mean, I'm doing all these things, and it seems like every time I turn around, they're getting something, and I'm getting less, or I'm getting the shaft, and all this good stuff. But sometimes we can, in this situation, look at others, and you're just like, why in the world is it that I can pray for that exact same thing, something even more powerful? I need something greater, and yet here they are, and they're moving on with their life, or seemingly, and I'm still stuck here. And if we're not careful, if we're not careful, that will lead us to a place where we begin to doubt God, deny God, and then eventually we'll just be a dropout. We'll be able to find you. Because it didn't happen the way you thought it was supposed to happen. It didn't happen when you thought it was supposed to happen. And that's exactly what's going on. He's like, man, here I am. I've done all these things. I've seen this realm. I've seen God. And yet here he is begging God to take it from him. And he would not take it from him. For sake of time, let me give you the first of two major thoughts. I want to give you his reason for no. His reasons for no. The first one is this. I believe that when God tells us no, it keeps us, you listening to me? It keeps us from destructive pride. I think this text tells us when God says no to us, and then he may not audibly say that, no. I don't know how God's voice is. I don't know if it's like deep and real powerful. I believe it would be, you know what I mean, like a thunder, you know what I mean, I don't know. But when he says no, I think the reason he tells us no is it keeps us from self-destructive pride. Because in this text, remember, it's not your strengths, it's not your talents, it's not your accomplishments, it's your weakness that he says that I will use. And so what we want, though, is we want to be that guy. We want to be the Tim Tebow, and I'm just using him as an example, okay? We want to be the Tim Tebows that we make the touchdown and we take a knee and we say, praise the Lord. We don't want to be the guy that gets diagnosed with cancer or told that he only has a few weeks to live, and yet in the midst of that, he says, praise you, Lord. I will do everything I can with every breath I have left. We don't want that, and that sometimes leads us, if we only have just those touchdown moments, those glory moments, it leads us to becoming boastful and prideful. I know in my own life there are things that I struggle with that every time I turn around and it seems that way, it may be weeks to go by, but I will be reminded that I am a divorced pastor. You understand that? And I think that's just the way. And I know it hurts a little. It stings a little bit. You may not have known that, and it stung you a little bit just then. That's okay. It stings a little bit, okay? Because I didn't choose this life, God chose me. But I think with all that said, it is a constant reminder that God used my greatest struggle thus far to show his strength and power of resurrection. And so the reason he says no most of the time, if not every time, is to keep us from self-destructing pride, because we all think more highly of ourselves. I also think that the reason he tells us no, God says no, the reason he keeps us from things is Christ's power. It says, Christ's power may rest on me. Interesting word there. You with me? Say amen. That word rest, it carries with it the idea, it really, the definition of that word there, it means to fix upon. It literally talks about, or is a word picture of how we fix a tent upon, and it stays there. Watch this. This is really cool. This is why he tells us no, because you want him to say yes. You think everything you want is the best thing for you, but he says no, okay? And listen, I know Garth Brooks. Listen, God was before Garth Brooks, okay? And his unanswered prayer song. I get that. Just stay with me, okay? Get that out of the way, all right? And understand, the reason he says no is he knows how prideful we are and how we'd brag and we'd begin to think that it is our kingdom we are building and not his kingdom. But the second reason he says no is that it's a beautiful message. And when it talks about rest, it is a direct reference to the Old Testament and the Shekinah glory resting on the Holy of Holies and the tabernacle. It is when Solomon made the sacrifice, and it talks about the glory. And here's what it is. In your weakness, in your struggle, in that place you are right now that you're wishing that you could get, and you're begging God God to remove it or to move you past it. In that moment, I don't know what he's doing, but I know the reason he's left you there is so that it will not boast of you, but it will brag of him. And the message that people see is it is those that are down and out that glow the most. Do you know what I mean? The ones that, man, they seem to have everything against them, but in the midst of all that, man, they still praise God. They still show up and they still show out for the Lord. And it's the Shekinah glory. It's something about those that can be in the greatest of difficulties, but in that moment be reminded that in your weakness, I will show my strength. I will flex my muscles. And so I want you to be encouraged that the reason he says no to us is so that he keeps us from self-destructive pride, but also because he has a greater message to share. What message would it be to say, look what I've done? I had an opportunity yesterday. I love how people pick on me. I try to share my life with you, and I know that when they pick on me, they're just saying, I love you very much. You're an awesome, studly, swaggerful guy. You know what I mean? I love making words up. And so I had an opportunity to go to Core yesterday, one of the local gyms, and yes, I want to live a healthy lifestyle and all that good stuff. But anyway, and in there, it took 30 minutes to actually get to working out because in there, if he watches this or listens, Dustin Martin's there. And I don't know if you know Dustin. Dustin was, and is still a very dear friend of mine and a lot of history there. And he was a part of the Bible study that this thing birthed out of. And how you guys remember when he proposed to his wife and a beautiful child now and in ministry and all this good stuff. But as we sit there in fellowship, as we stood there and we talked about what God's doing in our life, what God has done and what we want him to do, it come up when we were mindful of how our lives were brought together. And guess what? This church, myself, Sandra, all that are involved, we were birthed out of weakness, out of brokenness, out of what most people would say disgust and shame, and out of all of that. And so it's a message that says to the world, they couldn't do that on their own. As a matter of fact, do you remember when we launched? Some of you are going to know it's my first Sunday, but we'll hang on, okay? All right. When we launched, we had the opportunity to be Southern Baptist or be whatever, but if we wanted to, we chose non-denominational, but if we was going to be Southern Baptist, and we could have because I'm, a part of the Southern Baptist theologically seminary training, yada, 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 but I'm Pentecostal by belief. Anyway, and so when I say all that, I say this. Man, we didn't have time to go through all their studies to get their money that they give you a month. And it's a great thing for church plants, and I'm not knocking it at all. But do you remember, we didn't have any financial backing at all. As a matter of fact, most good church planters say that if you need somewhere around 20 families that are committed in that community before you launch. Well, we have maybe 11 or 12. Dawn did all the sewing. Jen bought the material. Not to point people out. We did the yard work. Chad brought over the lawnmower, the weed eater. I've got a really cool picture somewhere where I'm like, I got the weed eater. I actually used it. I didn't just pose with it. But we all come together and did our part. We made coffee and we had... Let's don't tell them we had breakfast or anything because they'll start wanting that again. But we didn't have all. You see, do you understand what I'm saying when I say that? When we do what we do now, it makes no difference the size of the crowd. But we're still here because people said when we started that those pop-up churches, they won't last. But we're still here and we're holding strong. We've been against the ropes a couple times and we'll be against the ropes a couple more times. And God may say, no, stay right here, right now, even though I'd love for us to be in a different place. We're still here. It is out of our weakness. It is out of our weakness, out of him saying, no, this is not it. This is what I have, and we're being obedient to that. And so when God tells you no, it shouldn't lead us to a place where we begin to doubt God. It should inspire us. And he tells us no to keep us from self-destructive pride, to give us a beautiful message, and ultimately so that he gets all the glory. Because Paul said, therefore, I've accepted this thorn in my flesh. I've accepted this part of my journey. It is part of who I am. And it is not for me to boast. It is so that Christ, and for his sake alone, he gets all the glory. I can't stand being around those folks that every time you turn around, it seems like all they do is brag on themselves. You know what I mean? And I believe you, I know you got to love yourself and you got to believe in yourself and all that good stuff, and I'm not taking anything away, but be very careful and be very mindful that where you are is simply by the grace of God. that where you are in life, any achievement that you ever achieve or anything that ever knocks you down, it is a part of his divine plan, and that you are who you are simply because God allows it to be. I mean, you don't even breathe on your own. Did you know that? Do you know I've taught you this? And I'm not into science and all that, but did you know that we understand that the globe, the earth that we're on, the gravity pull, the force, that we're on a specific degree, an axis, and that you know if we were one this way or the other way, we'd either burn up or we'd freeze? I'd Google it, all right? I'm telling you, who do you think did that? Who do you think put that in that specific place in that specific time? It is so that he gets all the glory and he gets all the honor. That's why he tells us no. It's so that when you struggle, that you can say, look what God has done. And it's not so much that you even got to say anything. You don't even have to say, look what God has done. People will see the Shekinah glory on your life, that in the midst of the greatest hell, you are absolutely worshiping and you didn't break stride. You stuck the course and you did what God told you to do. Sometimes he will tell you no, and the reason is to keep you from you. Just think, go ahead, give him praise in the house. All right, I feel a little John Hagee in here. Give him praise and honor in the house of God. Watch a little John Hagee. Cornerstone. I'm giving him a plug. I'm just saying. We love it when he says yes, and we flex and we say, look at my achievements. We can't stand it when he says no. But there's always a reason. Secondly, and in closing, I believe in this text we see the reason he tells us no. I believe he teaches us how to respond when he says no. And most of us, let's be honest, really, let's be honest. Most of us, I point to the screen, most of us respond like little Anderson when we don't get our way. And men, I'm telling you right now, we are the worst. All right? I can say that because I is one. Don't talk about nobody else, but I is one, okay? And so I can talk. I mean, listen, sulk, pout, stomp around. Will you quit knocking your head? That's messed up. I see that down there. And we can respond that way. And it's so funny. It is so funny that, it's 10 days or so. Addie's going to be gone. And I had an opportunity. I got out of school early, spent a little time with her before I had to drop her off, and then they make their way over there. It's so funny. I wanted to buy her a new set of headphones, the fancy ones, cover your ear, anyway. And I didn't go Beats. I heard Beats, but those were way too much. These are the Brokes. For the broke folk. And so we love Beats if they watch. Supply us all with them. So I bought those. I spent time with her. I buy those, and they were somewhat really expensive and all, but that's beside the point. And so but we go to get those, and she's excited, and we go. I let her choose, and she wants Wild Wings, and she wants to sit at the bar. No, I mean she wanted to. Just seeing if you're listening. Sorry, Nanny. And anyway, so we go to eat, and we go to Walmart to get the headphones and come back through, and then I circle. I made the mistake. I circled through the toy section, and I'm a cheapskate. I thought I might find a cheaper set of headphones in the toy section, maybe some knockoffs or something. I didn't know, and so I did. But she reminded me that I told her I'd get her a skateboard. Now watch this. The girl's fixing to leave me for 10 days. I've got a short window of time to love on her and her to love on me back. But do you know what she wants to do? But Daddy, I did good at school. And can't I have this skateboard? And she's got headphones. And I said, Addie, are you really going to do that? But so often, we do the same thing. God says, I give you this. I give you this. And all you can do is whine about that. No. And so I said no. And it's not because I don't love my little girl. I love her with every fiber I have in me. And so if I have that kind of love in the flesh, you imagine how the Lord loves us to give his only son for us. And yet we all we do is we say, but God. And so you can respond that way, or you can respond like this. You can affirm his presence. Let me give you a few things, please. No does not mean that no one is home up there. You with me? When he says no, it does not mean that he's left. The Bible teaches us that he neither sleeps nor slumber, which means he doesn't take a smoke break. Okay? He's never off duty. He's always God, always has been, always will be, and he knows exactly where you are at all times because he even, if you still got them, numbered the hairs originally on your head. He designed you. He crafted you. He molded you. The Bible teaches us in Ephesians that we are his poimae, that we are his workmanship, his craftsmanship, his masterpiece. We are that. And so he takes pride in us and he loves us. And when he says no, it does not mean that he's not home up there. We get so discouraged in prayer by thinking God has said no, when in fact, he said nothing at all. It's because he's not giving you an answer yet. And I know sometimes it can be so frustrating and lead to doubt. It can lead to disappointment. It can lead to division. It can lead to you being a dropout. It's when you've prayed and you've prayed and you've prayed and you've prayed, and then you see your co-laborer and they pray and it's like, boom, they get an answer. Why can't I get my answer like that? Why can't I get my healing like that? Why can't my kid come back home? Why couldn't she get up out of the bed? Why don't they get delivered from cancer? How come it's them over there that got healed with the back problem? How is it that I'm not? And if you're not careful, and if you don't get this, and you don't affirm that no matter what if he doesn't say anything, that it's not that he doesn't care, that he's always on time, and he's always on duty. And to affirm his presence means that I in fact know. Watch this. We may, on the flip side of that, get a negative response. But any response is proof that there is a responder. It's not that he's not there, that he's always there. So if he's telling, Paul's saying, listen, he's not going to take this from me. But I know he's there. I have seen him firsthand, and I will boast in my thorn. I will boast in my disease. I will boast in my backache. I will boast in my limp. I will boast in my little house. I will boast in my wore out truck. I will boast in my job that seems miserable. I will boast in this dead end. I will boast. I know my God is there. Affirm his presence. Secondly, you are to respond not only by affirming his presence, but affirm his power. Just because God will not does not mean he cannot. Just because he doesn't do it over here does not mean he can't do it at all. We don't dictate. I heard a quote from just a Hollywood movie, but it has stuck with me. You and I, we cannot control the wind. All we can do is adjust our sail to the wind. Do you understand me? Just because you get a negative response, and just because he does not mean he cannot. Our God can. And the Bible teaches in Ephesians he is able to do abundantly more than we can even ask or imagine, even think possible in our life. So just because he don't does not mean he cannot. Affirm his presence, affirm his power, affirm his purpose. God's no is not a rejection. God's no is not a rejection. It is simply a redirection. Just think for a moment where you would be if you got everything you wanted. You know the old saying, hindsight's 20/20? The older you get, the better that focus is. Holy smoke. Just because he rejects, it is simply because he wants to redirect. God's no isn't punishment, it is preparation. God's no opens the door to an adventure with God. We do not always know what the purpose is, but we can affirm that there is a purpose. And because of what God has revealed to us of himself, we know that his purpose, are you listening? His purpose is all loving and all wise, which leads me to close with this one word. What Paul is saying, when you don't hear anything or when you get a no, it is simply that we don't think that he don't love us or he don't want anything to do with us. We understand just by nature who he is. And he says this, he says his grace, that one word grace, is sufficient. So in the midst of your struggling with somebody saying no or God not moving like he's supposed to, you need to understand that he says, my grace is sufficient. Now watch this. When he says my grace is sufficient, what this means is this grace is the ability to show up one more time. This grace is the ability to clock in one more time. This grace that is sufficient that he's talking about, it is that one that says, I will go and I will take my treatment. I will go see the doctor. I will not give up. I will not quit. I know that my God's grace is sufficient. This is what he's talking about. And when he talks about this grace being sufficient, it is a supernatural sustaining grace that keeps us fighting and fighting and fighting. Now watch this. You listening, say amen. And this is it, because we're going to open the altar. Most of us never, ever experience this grace he talks about. You know why we don't experience this grace? And so, well, I'm saved. I'm talking about this sustaining grace that even in the middle of feeling like we've been rejected or we've been told no. The reason that we don't is what the old school church called striving. And see, if we're not careful, when God tells us no, if we're not careful, we will war with that. We will strive. We'll say, I'm going to do it. I don't care. And you may not point your finger at God, and you may not say this audibly to him, but you live your life in such a way that you say, I don't care if you told me no. I want that. I'm going to go get that. And none of us will ever experience the sustaining grace that Paul is talking about here. This is how you respond to no. This is exactly how you keep from doubt, discouragement, and eventually dropping out of the race. This is how you do this. You respond and accept this sustaining grace by doing this. Watch this. You do that by lay down your fight. Lay down your strife with God. Lay that down and simply say this. Not my will, but your will. You see, Paul knew because he had spent time with Jesus. He spent 3 years on the backside of Arabian desert being trained and prepared. He had spent time with the disciples before he launched out. He understood that he could not get rid of whatever that was ailing him. He could not shake that. It tormented, it buffeted him. Every day he was punched. He was hit repeatedly over and over and over. Yet this grace he's talking about was the grace to show up one more time, or to be stoned and dragged to the edge of Lystra, and then to get up and get over the bruises and go right back to the same town and preach the same gospel to the same people in the middle of rejection. This sustaining grace is saying, not my will, God, but your will. And he knew it come from Jesus. Jesus prayed 3 times in the garden, Father, if it be not thy will, take this cup from me. He prayed the exact same prayer. And so it should encourage you. How do you get past? How do you praise? How do you live in the midst of rejection? You do it by saying, not my will, but your will. And some of you have been warring and you're wore out. You are frustrated with God. You are frustrated with the church. You've had all you can take. You absolutely want to throw in the towel. I am telling you, this sustaining grace is available to you. So I am a Christian. That's good. Lay down that fight. Don't you think the creator of it all, the one that put those nerves in the right place, the brain that would fire to tell all those things what to do, don't you think for a second, being that he is the designer and creator, that he might just know more than you know it all? That grace is yours. All you have to do is lay down the fight. Stand with me, please.